Hi, Tuesday. It's tip time. Are you ready? This is about how to know if you know enough. That's what it's about. And today I'm actually drinking from my Atlanta mug. So for those of you in hot Atlanta, Georgia, cheers. Grab a mug, settle in. I want to talk about this topic because it's such a big deal for all of us. Like, you're going out to make this career as a coach, and you're asking people to pay you money. And it's like, how do I know if I can do that? How do I know if I'm good enough to do that? I actually remember when I graduated from my health coaching school in 2006. Oh my goodness, that was a long time ago. Is that 8 years? Oh my gosh, that's 8 years ago. Okay, so when I graduated from that school in 2006, I remember asking one of the guest faculty at the time, was a really phenomenal nutritionist named Liz Lipsky. Some of you may be familiar with her. And I actually hired her to work with her as a client. And I said, I just started talking about business naturally, and I was like, Liz, I don't think I can do this. Like, when am I ever going to know enough? And she was like, Carrie, I've been doing this for like 25 years, and I still don't think I know enough. And I was like, oh, all right. That made me feel a little bit better. So if you're asking yourself the question, and actually I would encourage you right now, ask yourself the question, how will I know when I know enough? And if any of your answers are the following: 1, I'll know enough when I know every single answer to every single question. Or if your answer is, I'll know enough that I am so powerful that I can magically make every client okay, right? Or if your answer to that question is, I will know enough when I can fix any client and make her happy or make him happy. Those are valid answers. They actually would have been answers that I would have answered years ago. But what I learned is, if those are your answers and that's your criteria for knowing enough, then you're really setting yourself up for an impossible standard that you'll never reach, because none of those things are actually possible. It's not possible to know all the answers to everything. It's not possible to magically make everyone okay. And it's not possible to really be a savior who can kind of fix anyone and make them happy, even though, gosh, wouldn't that be appealing? Especially for some of your family members. So that still leaves us with a question: how do you know when you know enough? And how do you know when to feel confident, which is really one of the biggest questions we get ever, always. So there are 2 questions in today's checklist that I want you to ask yourself to discover if you do, in fact, know enough. And the first question is, you're going to ask, how will I know enough? Let's say that again. How will I know when I know enough for what? Actually, it says you in the checklist, but you want to say, how will I know when I know enough for what? Interesting qualifier. That makes the question more specific, so you can get a more specific answer. When you just ask, how will I know enough? It's like, ooh, that's very amorphous. Like, I don't know how you will know enough. But if you ask the question, how will you know enough? How will you know when you know enough for what? Then we can get closer to the answer. So it might be, how will I know enough to get my first client? Or how will I know when I know enough to launch a program online? Or how will I know when I know enough to be a best-selling author and be on Oprah? So once you've specified your question, then you can get the answers. And now sometimes you'll need how-to answers, like, what are the steps to get your first client? Or what are the steps to do a launch of a program online? Now, if you get the how-to answers, or you have the how-to answers, and you're still frozen, then here's a really interesting perspective on why that might be. So I went to a training, just like you do. I go to lots of trainings. And I was sitting in the audience, and there was a guy named Dan Sullivan, who is a phenomenal, like, legendary coach. He has a company called Strategic Coach. And he explained something that I thought was fascinating. I'm going to share with you, and it is definitely his work. So I want to make sure that we credit him. And he basically talked about the sort of journey to confidence, and that it's a 4-quadrant sort of journey. And there's commitment, there's courage, there's confidence, and there's capability. But which order do these go in? Well, when he explained it, he said, actually, it starts with commitment. You're going to make a commitment. Then you have to have courage. You have to be willing to go through a period of discomfort. Then you move into capability, which means you are going to learn how to do a certain task. And then, and only then, do you arrive at competence. So if we were to put numbers on these, which you can, you're going to put a 1 at commitment, a 2 at courage, a 3 at capability, and a 4 at competence. So I'll show you that again. So first comes commitment, right? Yeah. Second comes courage. Third comes capability, meaning I know how. And then fourth comes confidence. Now, why did I think this was so cool? Well, Dan explained it. He goes, well, everybody wants to get to confidence. They don't realize that they have to go through all of these stages first. And the reason why people want to get to the confidence, just like I do, is because confidence feels really good. And courage feels really crappy. But you have to go through a period of courage to get to the confidence. So it's not possible to come out of the gate in any stage of your business and feel 100% confident in anything new that you're doing. You are simply not going to feel that way. So when you're going to do something new in your business, if you're getting your first client, if you're raising your fees, if you're launching a program online, and you expect to feel confident about it, that's an unrealistic expectation. Because what you're first doing is you made the commitment to do something new, and then you're going into a period of courage, meaning you're probably going to crap your pants a little and be scared. And then as you go through it and do it, you're going to gain the capability, so you're going to know how to do it. And then once you've gone through all of that, then you arrive at confidence. So here's a little secret. You will never know enough to avoid the period of courage that it takes to get to confidence. So in some ways, sometimes we ask the question, how will I know when I know enough? It's because I really want to avoid the feeling of discomfort. I want to avoid that leap of faith, that courage that I have to have of jumping out into the unknown so that I can eventually get to confidence. So again, you want to make sure when you're asking yourself the question, how will I know when I know enough for what? To remember that you will never know enough to bypass the stage of courage. And that's okay. It's totally normal. Every single person that you may, I don't know, follow online or look up to or read their stuff, every single one of them doubted themselves and at some point felt they didn't know enough for whatever it is that they wanted to do. But they went through the stage of courage, got the capability, and eventually they got there. All right, let's look at the second question on the checklist, which is, how will you know when you know enough for whom? Or you could say to yourself and say, how will I know when I know enough? For whom? So we add that little specification on at the end, and for those of you who have been in our transformational coaching method, that's a what kind of question? A meta model question. No, you and I, TCMers. So this is a way to specify the question. And actually there's another way to say it, which is, how will I know enough as compared to whom? So two ways you could ask this question. How will I know when I know enough for whom? Or how will I know when I know enough compared to whom? Or as compared to whom? So this is a great specifier for this question, because when you have if you have an answer, not all of you may, some of you may think, well, I don't know compared to whom. But some of you may go, well, compared to X or compared to Y. For example, you may have a family member that you're trying to prove yourself to or impress. We had a health coach client at one point who's so phenomenally successful. I just absolutely adore her. And she was really worried because when she started working with us, because men in her family were doctors and she was a health coach. And if she made more money than the men in her family who were doctors, what would that mean? So she really held herself back in a way so that she wouldn't challenge that status quo. She in some way wanted to keep their validation or make sure, like, oh my gosh, just compared to them, am I allowed to make this much money? Or maybe you're someone who works in a different kind of way than the norm of society, and you might be afraid that people won't take you seriously. Or again, if you're a health coach or wellness coach, you might be afraid that you're supposed to be a doctor and that you're supposed to know enough as someone who's been in school for a bajillion years, and that you're supposed to be diagnosing and treating your clients like you would be a doctor. So if any of those are concerns for you, or if there's anyone in your life who you feel like you have to know enough compared to them or for them, what we're really looking for in that scenario is validation from the outside. In fact, what you're really looking for is permission to pursue the career that you want to pursue, and you're looking at that from the outside. So when you're asking, how will I know when I know enough for my dad? Or how will I know when I know enough as compared to a doctor? Excellent question, because now that you've specified that question, you can specify the answer. Now, if you're still not sure, if you can't get to an answer, or you're just not sure if what you're doing as a coach in the world is for real, I mean, let's face it, this is, you know, a lot of people will look at this career and go, are you kidding? I live in Chicago, as you all know, so I will go to the grocery store, to the gym, or, you know, wherever, my training, you know, group with a bunch of people I train with, and people say, what do you do? And I say, or where do you work? Or where's your office building? I say, oh, I work from home. Oh, what do you do? I say, oh, well, I have a coaching business, and we train coaches to make a living coaching and advance their coaching skills. And people look at me like, what? I don't even know what that is. I'm not really sure what you're telling me. So this is kind of different, and you may not be sure that what you're doing or what you're pursuing as a coach is like for real. So if that's the case, and you really are worried that you don't know enough for society at large to sort of have permission to take this alternative route in your career or in a career period, then here's what you want to do. You want to follow other people who are doing what you're doing, exactly what you're doing. You want to be on their newsletter list, their emails, watch their videos, watch their stuff. You want to go to their events because you want to learn everything from those people. Because there's something about them, like what are they believing about themselves, that the question, how will I know enough, or how will I know when I know enough, it's not stopping them. So what are they believing to be true about themselves that question is not stopping them? So you want to be all over those people like white on rice. And like, for example, for those of you who are coming, we've got Holistic MBA Live. It's the event is sold out, but it's a live event that we do in San Diego from October 9th through 11th. I think we're going to have a couple hundred amazing coaches there. And how is it that Stacy and I feel that we know enough to put on an event like that? And let me tell you, when we first did it in May of 2011 was the first event, I did not sleep for 3 months because I had that very same question of like, oh my God, I just don't know that I know enough to be doing this. So what I did to prepare for that event was I studied. I studied the mentor that I was studying with. I actually think I had 2 coaches at that time who were doing events, and I studied every piece of material they had about doing events, and I went to their events, and I was a student because I thought, well, you know, I may not know enough, but they're doing it, so they certainly know how it's done. So I'm just going to go to the events, I'm going to be a student, and, you know, I guess 8 events later, here we are, Stacy and I at Holistic MBA Live. So I'm really curious to hear from you. When you ask yourselves these questions, which one really resonated? Was it the one where you added for what at the end? How will I know when I know enough for what? Or was it for whom? How will I know when I know enough for whom? Or as compared to whom? Leave a comment below. I'm super curious to see how that landed for you and what comes up and how I can help you answer how you will know when you know enough. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next Tuesday.